Hey there guys, how's it going? You guys have been asking for a full mix breakdown? Well, here it is. Just to clarify, this isn't a tutorial on Reaper or how to mix. This is just what I use and what I like to do. First of all, I'm just going to show you a quick clip of the track today. This is the Rock Amp demo. This is one of my latest videos. Here it is. So there it is, that's a very typical mix, very typical sound from me. I use a lot of the same things in most of my demos, and any differences I make, any changes I make are very slight. So let's jump in to the drums. What I use is Perfect Drums. I've been using this for a long time, couple of years. There's a few demos I've done where I've used other things or demoed different drum kits, but Perfect Drums are my go-to for sure. So guys, this is the kit I use. It's a custom blend of all different stuff. If you know Perfect Drums, you'll know that most of the drums sound amazing. What I've been doing lately is I got some Panda Sound one-shot samples. I've been using this root kick on the kick drum recently, and it's a really fat sounding with a nice click on top, very modern sounding kick drum. Just sounds huge when you blend it in. And I've been using this Korea snare, which has a nice crack to it. On Perfect Drums, you can blend these in. So you can have the standard kit on Perfect Drums. They sound great. You know, I was using those for years, and they're amazing sounding drums. But, you know, after a while, I wanted to change. So I ended up getting those one-shot samples. And when you blend them in, you get a really, really nice sound. I'll show you that in a minute. EQ, I put this across the whole kit. I don't split up the kit into individual tracks and mix like that. I used to do that, but I find Perfect Drums is just so well mixed out the box, you just don't really need to do that. So across the whole kit, I put this EQ. You know, got a low shelf at around 40. I've got a tiny little dip in the low mids around 160. And then to get rid of some of the horrible woofiness out of the whole kit, I take a fairly hefty dip at 400. And then, you know, there's a tiny little dip around 9K, 10K. Okay, compression. I've been doing this NY drum bus thing. It's altered slightly from the preset. I really like it. It's got a really nice drum bus compression sound to it. You know, just gives it a bit more punch. I've got a whole video on this, so go check it out. I'll just let you hear the drums by themselves. So as you can hear, they're quite a processed sound, but in the mix, they just sound absolutely enormous. So guitars, I put this chain on every video demo I do of guitars at the end after the demo. So I always show my chain, but I'll just go through it quickly. Ignite Tyrant Screamer in sort of boost mode. You know, nothing out of the ordinary. You've probably seen a lot of people do this sort of setting before an amp. It's to kick in the front end of the amp, give it a little bit more gain, but it's mostly to give the guitars tightness before they hit the amp. And then this is Rock Amp. You've seen this on the Rock Amp demo. It's just a cool free VST. It's a fairly new one. If you haven't tried it, I suggest go get it. It's amazing. And this is Pulse, Lancaster Audio Pulse. It's an IR loader. The IR I use on most demos is the Engel Pro 4x12 V30 SM57 New 7. That's always on my demos. Well, most of the time anyway. I always use something from this pack. And then EQ, you've seen this kind of thing before. Got a high pass to about 110 to get rid of the rumbly low end. You want to keep the guitars out the way of the bass and the drums, and the best way to do that is to high pass it. Then I've got this fairly wide dip. I'm just taking out some of that horrible, muddy low end. And some of the super low mids, you know, you just got to get rid of that stuff. It's rubbish. People use a multiband compressor to get rid of this frequency on palm mutes, but I just don't really like this frequency, so I dip it the entire time with this EQ. Then I've got this, you know, little notch out at about 4K-ish, just taking off, you know, about -4 dB, just to get rid of some of the harsh frequencies. This notch is usually around here, maybe 3.5K, but, you know, somewhere around there. Depends on your guitar, depends on your amp. And then I've got a low pass to about 8K, just to get rid of some of the not harsh top end, but the, you know, just the messy top end. You just don't need any of that on the guitar, really. Not above 8, 9, maybe 10K. Just get rid of it. Just low pass it. So that's the guitars. I always do 2 guitars, 1 panned hard left, 1 panned hard right. This is guitar number 2. This is panned hard left. Pretty much the same settings. The only thing I really change is the IR. So on this, I've got the same pack, the Engel Pro 4x12 pack, and I'm using the between 1 on this particular song. I will use different IRs on the other side. You know, I'll just, whatever I feel like doing, to be honest. Okay, lead guitar. I've got this panned up the center, and I've got pretty much the same setting on the Ignite Tyrant Screamer. On the amp, I tend to go with a more mid-heavy tone. I'll use more gain as well, just so it saturates more, gives me more sustain on certain notes. On the IR, I'll just go with whatever I feel. I liked the between 1 on this one, so I stuck with it. Okay, here's the EQ for the lead guitar. Big high pass to about 200 Hertz to keep it completely out the way of any other instrument in the low end register, including the rhythm guitars. I've got it completely out the way, frequency-wise. And then I've got a notch at about 4K, quite a severe one, because when you're dealing with the higher strings, you're probably going to get a bit more of the harsh frequencies poking through. So I've taken that down to -5.7 dB at 4K. So it's quite a hefty notch there. And then the low pass, I bring it down even more. This is about 6K, but you know, I just do it to taste depending on the demo. Okay, bass guitar. This is pretty much the same as it was in my mixed bass and drums video that I released last year. You know, not much has changed really. I've got the BOD by TSE. Here are the settings. I've increased the low end sort of quite a bit recently. It's on about 2 o'clock. Maybe I'll increase it to 3 o'clock. It depends on the demo. EQ looks something like this. Super scooped. Keep it out the way of the guitars. The guitars kind of exist in the mid-range, so I'm scooping the bass to really keep it out the way of the guitars. Then I've got this sort of low shelf, just to keep it out of the way of the kick drum. I've increased the bass on here, so it's covering the whole low end spectrum really well. So there's a lot of low end, and then I just do this shelf here just to keep it out the way of the kick drum, because the kick drum sort of hits at around 40, 50, 60, maybe 70 hertz, and I want to keep it out of that frequency range. Not get rid of it completely, just sort of, I don't want to high pass it, but I've just put a shelf there just to kind of tame it a bit. And then the compressor, you know, driving rock bass preset, this thing's really great. Bring the threshold down till I'm getting a little bit of gain reduction. I mean, the BOD has a really nice sound to it, and you don't really need to put a compressor on it, but I do like to have the compressor on there just to control it that little bit more. When I record the bass, I record it on that track, sounds really good, and then I copy it and put it below on a separate track. This is a completely separate track with the same performance on, and then I've got this, the Mokafix No Amp. This is just to give me a distorted bass track, and I bring this up underneath the more clean, not clean, but I bring it up underneath the BOD just to give the bass guitar a bit more presence and a bit more growl. I want a growlier sound. The Mokafix No Amp, you know, it looks like a Guitar Sans Amp copy, and it is, and it works really well. Don't think you can get it from Mac, but there are other Sans Amp copies out there, so try and find one of those. And you can use, you know, you can just use any guitar amp plugin really to do this, to achieve this. And then I've got EQ for this track. I've got it EQ'd like I would a guitar, but with a bit more of a high pass. Then the compression, driving rock bass preset. This is barely compressing it because the No Amp is distorting it in a fairly heavy-handed way, so you don't really need any compression anyway. On this particular track, I've got like a, a lo-fi bit, then I've got a clean bit, but I won't show you those. That's the track, basically. I mean, we're talking about most demos I do are drums, 2 guitars, left and right rhythm guitars, and then a lead guitar, and then 2 bass tracks. It's very simple. I'm not doing any bussing, nothing like that. So I do have songs with vocals, and I might show that if anyone's interested on a separate video. I do, I've got a clean vocal chain, and I've got a dirty vocal chain for screams and roars and things like that. So if anyone wants to see that, just comment below. Okay, the master track, I get asked about this a lot. All this is exactly the same, or near enough anyway. It's about 99% the same as it was in the video I released last year, Mastering Metal with Reaper stock plugins. If you haven't seen that video, go watch it. I go into a little bit more detail in that video about what I do. And this is pretty much exactly the same as that video. I've got the JS Exciter. This is the only thing that's changed. The settings are exactly the same, but this dry wet knob, I've put it down to 70% wet, just to take off some of the crazy brightness, because it was getting a little bit too much on some demos, so I just took it down to 70%, and that seems to be a nice amount. So that's what I do, guys. It's all pretty simple stuff. If you've got any questions, just ask me below in the comments. I'll try and reply to everybody. I'm going to link a lot of the plugins below, as many as I can. And there's a template listed below as well, so you can download this and check it out for yourselves. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Alright guys, since you've made it this far, I just want to plug some of my stuff. I've got an album out called Bear the Mark. It's 11 tracks of pure metal fury. Click the link below to check it out, listen to it for free, and buy it if you want it. And if you want to hear some really heavy shit, go check out my side project, Nest of Scum. That album is completely free. Go download it and enjoy it. Thanks for watching guys, I really appreciate it. And subscribe if you want to see more metal related stuff. I'll be back sometime with a video on something else, so until then, ciao.